Greetings! I'm Tantus Narvan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. Today we continue our talk about anime series. I give some reviews on them, and I tell you how to bring them into your BESM world. Today is a little special though. Today I actually want to bring in a couple of older animes and talk about them. Now these are series I enjoy a lot, I like them a lot, and I wanted to tell you about them and using them in your BESM world. So I'm going to start with the first one that I wanted to talk about, Claymore. Now it's an anime series from 2007. Now this series is based upon a manga, but the manga is actually complete too. I like the storyline for the manga a lot better, but the anime is actually really good. It does deviate towards the end of the anime for the last couple of episodes, which the storyline goes a little... I don't like it as resolving as better as if they had followed the complete storyline, but at the time they were only going for so many episodes, 26 episodes was the entire season, so they couldn't get into it any more than that. Now the story goes around this fictional medieval island where these creatures Yoma exist. These Yomas are shape changers which can disguise as people, and they eat people. So they're this threat. There's this group called the Organization which controls these women called Claymores, who are in fact half Yoma. They've been created through a process that they can control to basically fight Yoma, that they have the power of it. Now each of them uses yokai, which is sort of the energy of Yoma that flows through them, and they can use this for a variety of effects. Some of them use it to enhance their vision, others use it to enhance their physical ability through shape-changing or body-changing forms. And they have to worry about going too far and using too much of this, and possibly awakening as a Yoma themselves. A Claymore that becomes a Yoma becomes very powerful, becomes an awakened being, basically a super Yoma. Now on the island, it's divided into 47 districts, and there's a Claymore assigned to each of them. Now, every Claymore is given a number that represents their rank, basically, between these 47. Our storyline takes up with number 47, Claire, who happens to be the weakest Claymore on the island, or so it seems. We find out that she is trained to fight awakened beings, which doesn't work as well against normal Yoma, so she's ranked much lower than she really should. We sort of find out also very quickly that her backstory tells us that she's actually in fact a quarter Yoma, that she was taken in by a former first-rank Claymore who tried to separate herself from the organization, and in the ensuing chaos of being sent to take her back, ended up getting killed. This also formed Claire's biggest rival, Priscilla, who became an awakened being right off the bat, and Priscilla becomes this very powerful, the most powerful of the awakened beings, because she was effectively as powerful, or if not a little more powerful, than the rank 1 that Claire was hanging out with as a child. So the story is divided into various arcs, which sort of entail different characters, introduce things. Traditionally along the lines, Claire gets more powerful, but she also finds new allies, and the arcs go beyond what the anime stops at and goes deeper into it. The anime stops around the War of the North arc, and then starts bringing in their own thing, but after the War of the North, there is a time skip arc that goes beyond there. Anyway, so the genres, I would say, this is an action one. This is just a pure, battling, fighting monsters, fighting it out, but it's also a dark fantasy. It's got this kind of twisted darkness to it. So it's kind of it's a very fantasy setting with monsters and people with powers fighting these monsters, but it's also very dark and sort of violent, bloody, death happens a lot. But it also actually has some very dramatic elements to it. So I would call it a drama, because there's these relationships between them that a lot of them, when Claire finds people she likes, they tend to die, unfortunately, and tend to go in very unfortunate ways of death. Now I rate this one a 5. Now the next one I want to talk about is Cyber Team in Akihabara, or Akihabara Den no Gumi. Now this is an anime from 1998 that dates you how old I am a little bit. Now, it takes place in the futuristic year of 2010, where there's this big craze in Tokyo of these electronic pets who are also mobile pets. They're little robots that also function as phones and all these things, a lot of accessories. They're called patipes. Now, we have our main girl, Hibari-chan. Now, she's a junior high student and she can't afford one herself, and she wants to save up for it. So the one day she has this dream, and in this dream this prince gives her her own patipe, which She wakes up to find that it actually has a patopy. She names it Densuke. Densuke is a little dense for patopes. Patopes tend to have like an artificial intelligence to them. Some can actually speak. Like her one friend Suzume is very rich. She has a very high-end model that she puts a lot of work into. She's actually an expert. Anyway, so on the way home, she gets attacked. Hibari gets attacked, and she's attacked by this strange masked woman who summons these horrible sort of like mud men called homunculus, and eventually summons this large, monstrous sort of half machine, half creature called Cerberus. In the ensuing chaos, Densuke actually like transforms. This beam of energy comes down from the sky, and he transforms into a diva, which sort of looks like a gigantic version of her, but like in armor and more adult. That's an easy way of describing it. And the diva is Aphrodite. Each of the divas has their own name, and you find this out as more of Hibari's friends actually have this sort of transformation, that their patopes transform, and Hibari is sort of the source of it. And there are a couple more villainous ladies out there. There's a group of 3 of them. Anyway, eventually throughout the anime, Hibari eventually learns to be able to merge with Densuke when they're transforming, so that she becomes the diva himself. We learn that this is part of a immortality, like an evolution that the plan was for. There's also this shadowy organization run by some immortal alchemists who found the Philosopher's Stone, and there's a clone of the prince that they're dealing with. Of course, there's the evil women. There's the dealing with the prince that Hibari knows, which happens to be a semi-mortal who's been planning for some people to be able to take control of these divas, which actually exist, and the patopes are sort of to channel the divas down to the earth. And when Hibari merges with it, it's supposed to be like the sort of next step. The anime has this sort of strange mythological tone to it, with this sort of fantasy with the alchemy and stuff, but it's always got this sci-fi tone, because what they found is very like rooted in science, as they discovered Philosopher's Stone, the secret of eternal life, back ages ago, and that they've managed to sort of push science forward, that these individuals can. Anyway, I enjoyed this anime a lot. It's sort of got this humor to it, and it just the first time I watched it, I was just rolling with laughter. That's why one of the words I would use here is a comedy. It really has this huge amount of comedy, and it's kind of a silly thing. You almost sometimes want to call it a magical girl, though it's not magical, it's science-based, and the girls themselves are less based in it. So I'd call it really more of a sci-fi with magical girl connotations. That's kind of a weird genre to have, but there have been some other animes that I guess would fit under this sort of umbrella. And the last word I would use for it is, of course, action. The divas fight with the homunculus and the creatures like Cerberus. They have to deal with the women who are attacking them. They have to deal with other threats. They actually have to deal with the wire. One of the people that uses a diva starts out on the bad guy's side until Hibari befriends her. That's Tsubame. And then when she befriends Tsubame, her family basically adopts her, and that the girl that was raised to be basically their weapon joins their side. And it's very got these really good emotional points too, which enjoys the drama. And the fact that like Hibari learns that there's the clone of her prince, and that he exists, and that he isn't her prince, even though for a while she kind of thinks he is, almost tricking her. Anyway, this is another 5 I rate. So there is one other one I wanted to talk about today. I have been rambling on about, but I did want to get into and talk about the classic Sailor Moon series. Now, I talked about the Sailor Moon Crystal, so I'm not going to go into huge details for this other one. I'm going to go over it a little bit, but I've already talked about some of the things. I've talked about the genres for this one already, and the genres remain the same. Now, this anime ran from 1992 to 97. It's got 200 episodes spread over 5 seasons. The seasons, I will rate them differently, I'll tell you at the end, but each of them has a very unique tone to them. And they do vaguely follow the manga. Like, there are parallels in the manga and some basics of the storyline. But since they had so many episodes, they brought in a lot of, like, monsters of the week, a lot of the classic sort of like, oh, this monster comes from this sort of source, or this thing happens, that there's a lot of drawn-outness to it. Granted, it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. This is... The original, like, English run was only the first 2 seasons. And the second season is actually split into 2 halves, which is one of the reasons it's not bad, but is a little on the weaker side. The first half is actually something that has nothing to do with the manga. It was basically filler that they made. And then the second half deals with the actual stuff from the manga, which involves Chibi Moon Chibiosa coming and first meeting her. So I don't want to get into too much. I just want to say, like, it's a very good series to watch. It's one of the classic series. You know, it's like when you're watching one of the large series that has a lot of episodes, I'd say this is one of them to see. You do want to see Dragon Ball Z. There's a few others. People look to some of these others. Like Inuyasha had a lot of episodes. Rama 1/2. These are other ones that have a lot of episodes. I watched most of those. In fact, I watched pretty much all of them. I watch a lot of anime. So I did watch this. It is the quintessential magical girl anime. If you want to see a magical girl anime and see it, it's probably one of the lesser magical girl animes out of magical girl animes. If you want to really be hit with magical girl, go watch a Precure. Those are really magical girly. They are, if you're looking for more quintessential, that's the one to go with. This one, it has all the hallmarks of it, but it brings in some of the other things that, like the teamwork dynamic, a lot better. Anyway, I do want to rate them. I do give the 3rd and 5th seasons, I give those a 5. The 5th season does start out a little slower, so it's almost a 4, just because of the way the basic beginning goes, because they do have this sort of resolution that is part of the manga, that is resolution of the previous season, something that's brought in, that sort of pushes Sailor Moon to the next level and brings everything. It's the setup for the second half of the 5th season. So the 3rd season really is the best. After that, 1st and 2nd are sort of my next choices, I would say. They're around a 4. I am rating all the seasons differently, and the 3rd season's a 3. The 3rd season has some good moments, and I think the second half of it, where the Amazonas Quartet, is a lot better than the first half of it, where they have the Amazon Trio. Those are like the major people causing problems until they're resolved. And it's sort of when they reach that midway point, things pick up in this season, but for the first half, without it, it's not as good. Anyway, so I've talked about these 3 classic anime series. They're between 10 and 20 years old now. Some of them are actually a little older if you go back to the first episodes of Sailor Moon. That's 1992. These are some classics now. They're very good. I enjoyed them a lot. Some are remembered more than others. But again, these are some of the ones that were my favorites. I hope that you can look to enjoy them. In the next episode, which I'll put up right after this one, I will talk about each of them and using them in a BESM game. So, if you have any questions, comments, anything you want to say, leave them in the comments below. Please like this video if you want to support the channel. Also, subscribe. That's another way of supporting the channel, supporting the Empire. We're always looking for more members, more citizens. And if you know anybody that could learn anything, would enjoy this video, please share it. And until the next time, I bid you farewell.